Isaac Blake, and I grew up on the Starport-on-Severn site in England, and I grew up in Cardiff in England. I'm 33 and I was born in 1979. I was born originally in Bromsgrove in England, but my mum is Welsh and my dad is English. And I grew up on two sites, one in England and one in Cardiff. I grew up on the Starport-on-Severn site near Kidderminster, and also the Shire Newton site here in Cardiff. The life in England was a lot easier than in Wales. I grew up in the Gypsy Traveller community, and in England the site was quite close to a settled community. As a young man you could walk from the site to the school and access the library, leisure centres the same as anyone else could, and they didn't feel like there was any tension between gypsies and people from the settled community. And when I relocated to Wales, my mum came here because my nan was poorly, and my mum is one of the Jameses and my nan is one of the Evanses, before she became a James. And but life in Wales was harder than in England. The sites were isolated away from the settled community, and if you wanted to access the library, the gym, the leisure centre, you had to walk those roads in a day. There was no public transport. It was actually hard for you to actually make contact with people from a settled community, and you relied on your older siblings to take you off site so you can interact with people from a settled community. But saying that, I still had a great childhood. Life on site was fantastic. We have our own Romany language, a great sense of community spirit. The community take care of the children, so if you see a child on site in potential harm, you would intervene to make sure the child is safe. So the whole community raised the children and young people, and that's something to actually feel quite proud of. And it seemed like it was sunny every day. When I was in England, it seemed like it was shining every day, but when I moved to Wales, it was so much more hard and much more gritty and much more it was, yeah. Earliest memories. Early memory I have regarding Gypsy travel culture. When I was a young boy, my dad had taken me to a field, and there was other people in the field, and there was actually a fire, and I didn't understand what was going on, and it was someone's trailer being burnt. Someone had actually passed over, and in the actual culture, they burn the person's possessions, and the actual trailer, I think, goes up, if the person, in their afterlife. And I asked my dad what's going on, and my dad said, this is our culture, this is what gypsies do. I remember having a horse. Always been quite frightened actually of horses, but I soon got over that. And what else is there? Memories? Yeah, just lovely fond memories. I remember a lady on site called, we called her Suckertuff. You wouldn't call it to her face because that would be disrespectful. You'd call her aunt because she was from, it's because she had one tooth and she made that sound, so somehow the children gave her that name. It was a little bit unkind, but we did. But she was a real character, Just before her husband passed away, she was outside chopping the wood, and she was only like 4 foot. She used to be chopping the wood. The axe was as big as her. How she never chopped herself in half, I will never know. But her trailer felt the place that the community came together. We didn't openly say this is the way we come together, but collectively, subconsciously, we've all said this is the place we feel comfortable. People in her trailer got married, they had divorces. If it was going to happen, it was going to happen in her trailer. But she was a wonderful character. She was a fortune teller, and I have very fond memories of her. Very generous, warm, welcoming, always taking care of the children, doing lots of remedies. If something was going on, she would have something to give you. You'd always be a bit frightened, thinking, what is this? But it seemed to work out. So yeah. Yeah, in the gypsy community, there's different clans, I guess you would like call them. So you've got the Prices, the Lees, the McAllisters, the James. There's different groups dotted around. These days, people are pretty much all over Wales and England, and obviously, family is mixed between Romany gypsy and Irish traveller, because that's where we mix on site as children and young people. So family is important. I mean, if you meet another gypsy, they always ask you, who are you one of? So they want to know your family name. And as I guess in some families have a higher status than others. My nan was a lady called Julie James. believe me, she was fantastic with the children, but she was a nightmare with the adults. But she was perfect. I mean, everyone respected my nan. And if she was okay with something, it was perfect. They used to think they called my nan and my older brother Chivion and Mulla, which means witch and devil. You may think is unkind, but actually my nan and my brother thought it was quite comical. My nan and my older brother were both clairvoyants and fortune tellers, and if people had a problem, they would always come to them. So, but I come from a psychic family, as my father was from a psychic business, so was my mom, and my dad's mom, and so on. So myself, I'm a contemporary dancer, so I'm not at all clairvoyant myself. But I know when I was young, growing up, there was always lots of playing cards and tarot cards and readings going on, and people would always come to the trailers at night, have their teacup read, and they'd always seek counsel. So if there was an issue, the young people would go to the old people and ask them, what's the best way forward. If the person passes over, they first of all, we were not allowed to eat meat until the person is buried. You'd wear black the whole year through if this was a close family. I know in some Eastern European cultures, the wife actually shaves the hair and wears black the rest of her life. So you can go to that extreme. Here in the UK, obviously the partner would wear white if their partner just passed away, and they would also burn their possessions. They felt it was going to help them in the afterlife, and they wanted to make sure everything was gone. They would rather people be self-employed than take on paid employment. They do encourage young people at quite a young age to think about their future and how they're going to save and support themselves and support their community. Certainly when, obviously my dad was a clairvoyant, he also worked on the actual land. He used to plough the actual fields in a straight line, as he would often tell me. But he would also help young men with their marketing business plan. He would help them, but they wouldn't know what that name. They wouldn't know what the name was, but what he was really doing was actually mentoring and sort of supporting the next generation to be much more of a business professional, to make sure their business cards, their website and logos are done. So a lot of kids are educated. Some kids obviously do go to school, and the primary school is not a problem. There are always issues in secondary school. For multiple reasons. If you look back throughout the years, I think about 50 years ago, schools were almost turning away gypsy traveller children, saying that they weren't actually going to have these children. I remember speaking to Julie Morgan recently, one of the local AMs, and her mother actually went down to the site to actually support the children in reading and writing. Basically, she had to shame the council and saying these children have human rights the same as any other child has, but for some unknown reason, these schools were saying we're not going to have them. The reality is because it was from a mobile community that does travel for work, because you need to travel. You can't work if you can't live somewhere. If you can't work, you need to move on. So schools are a bit reluctant to take gypsy traveller kids on because their figures will go down, so their attendance rate. That is changing now in Wales. They've got a thing called a T code. So a child would have their base school, their home school, and when they go travelling with their parents, they can take that code away with them. So things are changing. Kids are usually taught the family trade. A lot of people used to buy and sell horses. They don't anymore. They buy and sell cars. So it's still transport, but from horses to cars. The Gypsy and Traveller community used to have the niche market in this small business. So knife sharpening, fence painting, scrap. But when that became big business, that sort of pushed the Gypsies and Travellers out. So people obviously bring the young people out. They teach them the family trades. That might be the clairvoyance. It might be the working on the markets. A lot of gypsies. You got different types of gypsies, all different shapes and sizes. I'm a little short one. You got tall, large ones. You get all different shapes and sizes. But I've never met a gypsy that isn't proud to say they're a gypsy. Yeah, you would all have your duties. And they aren't written down as in they're on a chart to follow. I remember a good example is Christmas time. People would make holly wreaths, and the whole family would be an old family activity. So each person would have a certain responsibility within that task to make this holly wreath as a family unit to obviously sell and obviously to put bread on the actual table. Yeah, the homes are very clean and tidy. They're spotless, even though some sites are next to a waste ground or a tip or toxic waste. Actually, on the actual Gypsy Traveller sites, there's they call them slabs. They have their own little pitch, their little slab. They have a little outdoor toilet area because we think it's unclean to go to the toilet inside your home. So we have an outdoor toilet area. And you've got your kitchen outside as well, and also inside the actual trailer, that's where the actual family have their community activities, watch TV, talk to their children. People take care of that. People are home proud. If they make any litter, they make sure it's all burned and all packed away. There is some issues with people from the settled community dropping off fly tipping by sites, and obviously people assume it's the people from the site fly tipping, when actually often not. The fact is it's not even someone from the site at all. It's somebody external from the actual community fly tipping. The home is spotless. The mom takes care of everybody. Make sure everyone's clean and tidy, and cleanliness next to godliness, and they do believe that. And from a Catholic community, so we wouldn't wash our hands in the same bowl we do our fruit and veg in, because that would be deemed unclean, because you obviously it's your food. So it's Mokadi. I'm sure someone would just smack you on the little bottom. I mean, it wouldn't be obsessive. It would just be a little. Some people, good parents put sanctions in, so they would take away the child's activity until they learned better. Children are learned at a young age never to disrespect any elderly people from the community or from settled community, because it's disrespectful. You're taught to take pride in your body, so you don't degrade yourself. So make sure you're clean and tidy at all times. You never know, you might need to go to the hospital. I need to make sure you've got clean underwear on, and How's that right? A lot of the elders are passing away, as people do. The Gypsies and Travellers have the highest, statistically, the health problems out of all the BME, purely because they don't seek help before they have a problem. This is for multiple reasons. I mean, if you're at the side of the road, you're deemed homeless, even though you've got your own trailer. You've got nowhere permanent to park your trailer. So if you wanted to register at the local doctors, you couldn't, because you need a postcode to register. So that model excludes Gypsies and Travellers, and of course anybody that's homeless. Gypsies do go to the hospital, so obviously, but we need to make sure we encourage people to, prevention is part of their cure. They need to make sure they're regular health checks and keep that dialogue going. But people from the settled community and even professionals, they won't go on Gypsy sites. They have this stigma for multiple sources. I mean, lately you've had the Big Fat Gypsy Wedding that hasn't painted a good picture, but for some reason people think that's everybody in the actual culture, and I don't think you can. There's good and bad in all, and you can't assume on one program that represents the entire culture, because that just isn't the case. I think they're doing more harm than good. I think it's good to have exposure. It's good to see some of the discrimination people face on a daily basis, because Gypsies and Travellers do get the most discrimination out of all the BME communities. I think it's the last form of racism, really. People still think it's perfectly acceptable to verbally abuse a person from Gypsy Traveller community, when actually it's not really, and we all know this. I don't know about the case in Ireland. I can't comment on that. All I know is that the government needs to do more than just give lip service. We have policies in place to make things better for people in our community, but so far it's just turned out to be lip service. It's empty words on a sheet of paper that doesn't have no direct impact on Gypsies and Travellers, and often not these policies made by people that haven't even met a Gypsy or a Traveller. Gypsies and Travellers have a warm community sense and a feeling. If you just go in a person's home, you'd have the best of welcome. You'd have loads of tea and coffee and loads of cake, and you'd have loads of children all around you, but they'd make you feel part of the actual community. but people, because of these walls, obviously we have walls on site, for multiple different reasons. It is a barrier sometimes for both sides, keeping gypsies in and selling people out. And I think we need to challenge that. It's lucky that I was working with yourself in BBSNW and around Wales, and we started doing the Gypsy Roma Traveller History Month. It's a celebration here in Wales. It's to celebrate the history, the culture, the lifestyle of gypsies and travellers, and of course our Roma brothers and sisters too, by providing activities directly on site, community arts development projects with the children, and also in schools, libraries and arts centres throughout Wales. And we've also recently started doing symposiums. We did an academic lecture, and that was for the policymakers to make sure they were informed, so they actually knew the latest information. And back in 2012 and 2013, we organised a national symposium. Well, really, it was an international event. We had academics from around the world. We had Professor Ian Hancock from Texas University, Dr. Adrian Marsh, who does a lot of work in Istanbul, Professor Thomas Acton. We had the top, they're the best academics. We had, of course, what the idea of the symposium is to bring the government, local authority, third sector, with the top academics in a forum to encourage debate and to put recommendations forward to inform policy, to make things better, not just give us lip service, but make things better. We are seeing a slight change, but when if you look at the census 2011, we're just on there now. And we've been in the country for 500 years, so well, why are we just on there now? So that says something about the actual culture here in the UK. There are barriers. People go to a GP. Most people, my mom's generation, can't read or write, purely because they couldn't get in school. Schools were turning people away. They said we were donating gypsy traveller kids. Their figures were falling down, and we have seen our schools accepting gypsies and traveller children. We've seen schools actually isolating gypsies and traveller kids, and I think that's another topic, but maybe not for today. As far as going to the GP, people go to the GP. The first thing they see is the receptionist. They ask them to fill a piece of paper. People are embarrassed. They can't read or write, And, people are very private. In the actual community of gypsy travellers, it's really degrading if a elder female has a male to look at her. She'd rather another female. It is gender specific, And obviously, if a male had male problems, should we say, he would rather another male look at him than a female, so you do have that. We are seeing that change slightly. I mean, there are men's health programs happening in Derbyshire with the Federation, so we are seeing a change in the actual community, but we still have a long way to go. We still have people isolated. You're on the site, we're in the seller community. Well, we need to rock that boat and say that model doesn't work, folks. We need to bring people together, so that's what we're doing in our work. There's all sorts, Nikki. There's Pentecostals, there's Church of England, there's Catholic. I mean, it goes across, predominantly Catholic community, predominantly. To be honest, people prefer children to marry in the community because it keeps that community bloodline. It keeps that strength, that sense of identity. But if a young person was adamant that they found someone they were smitten with outside the community, the family wouldn't have a problem. And they'd be welcomed into the actual community. So it does change geographically. There's more marriage between Gypsy and Irish traveller, and that's got to be a good thing, because some sites you go on are just Irish traveller, and some sites are just Romany Gypsy. But often or not, you'll get a site that's mixed. So it's good that people from the different communities, because they are two different communities, they aren't one. And of course, even in the Romany community, that's a huge community. If you think of the word Romany as an umbrella, there's different groups, and you've got the Sinti, the Darn, the Carliam, the Manouche. There's different communities around the actual world. So they've got different clan names. So, but certainly here in Wales, you've got the Romany Gypsies, and you've also got the Irish travellers. But it is good to see them mix and see them sort of marry in and share, culture and identity. So, yes, obviously you've got the internet. The internet's changed the whole world anyway. It hasn't just changed gypsies and travellers, but it's changed the whole world. Everyone's on BBM these days. All the young people. The old people don't like it because they don't think it's safe environment for a child or young person to be operating in. But because of peer pressure, parents do buckle and give the kids these phones. I wouldn't give a child a phone unless they were old enough, really, myself. But they do. There is a shift. There is a shift. Some of the traditions are dying out for multiple reasons. It was before you would see gypsies and travellers work on the land. You don't anymore because it's cheaper to get farming equipment to farm the land, and it's cheaper. So that's pushed gypsies and travellers out. But that was quite a good place for gypsies and travellers to be, because at least they were visible in the actual community. People could see them work and contribute in the community. These days, people are assuming, well, who are these gypsies? You know, what are they doing? Do they pay tax? Yes, we do pay tax. Yes, we do. We are responsible human beings, and we do want to contribute to society. Yep, it's very strict, very strict. The boy still has to go and ask the father, can he court the daughter? And if they say no, then it's forbidden. So that's, actually my older brother's going for that right now. He's got two younger girls who are growing up, and he's having some young men coming to ask, can they court his daughter? So that's happening right now in the actual family. If a girl stays out overnight, she's married, she can't go back the next day. Girls and boys are taught in the community that they marry once, so they aren't raised to think that they will have multiple partners. They're raised to think when they meet that person, that's the one person. And often or not, the people you play with as a child will turn out to be your husband and wife, because it's you're there on the site, and it's hard for you to go off site because of what we talked about earlier. Yeah. Well, girls only have one name, so they don't want their name took away. So if they do divorce, then that's it. They won't go with anyone else. Of course, people do. People meet other people, and life still has to carry on. Yeah, it's a tricky one. You don't think you're going to get divorced, but life teaches us that things change day by day. You've got to go with the flow more. Yeah. They've got their own Roman language and the Romani language. There are 80 versions of the Roman language, because obviously if you think of two groups, the Romani group and the Traveller group. So let's talk about Traveller first. The Traveller originated from Ireland, so they're Irish travellers. Yep. And the Romani group originated from India, and of course they've travelled around, and they stopped off at different countries. So they've got their mother tongue. Their Roman language dates back to Sanskrit, but also the adopted geographic area that they're in as well. In the UK, certainly in Wales, they have trilingual English, Welsh, and Romani, and when they speak, they have a bit of all sorts. They don't speak full English or full Roma or full Welsh. It's sort of fragmented between both, but one gypsy will know what another gypsy is talking about, and it's also Morse code and identity. So if somebody, and we've also got our own gypsy names. So for me, it's Mushy Boy. So my on my birth certificate says Isaac Blake, and that's who I am to the rest of the world. But in the community, they know me as Mushy Boy. Mushy means man, and boy because I'm quite short. So my dad was Big Mushy because he was tall, a big belly, and I was little Mushy. But no, you would speak Romani, and you'd speak Romani to teach your children. So to make sure because you need to make sure you communicate efficiently with children. Yeah. But there are 80 versions of the actual Roma language. I mean, but it is spoken in bits. So if I was, if you're going to tell someone to jol on, it means carry on. You'd say Kushti Bok, which means well done, good health. So you'd be wishing people. Yeah, you do get some family feuds that can last generations. Where did this even come from? But I remember a story once when I was a little boy. I was in my nan's trailer in Wales, because obviously we were here, and my nan took us from the bunk and from the couch and put us on the floor. But before she put me on the floor, I saw a lorry coming, and on the back of the lorry were men and women with base bats. And I think, as a little child, thinking, what's going on? And I remember my mom and her brothers, and she had lots of brothers, went out to meet them. obviously I didn't know what was going on at that point. My nan put all the children on the floor, turned the TV up, and just played with us. Really, well, the reality was actually outside. They were having strong words, shall we say? But they do have a lot of bare knuckle fights in the initial gypsy community. But the next day it's forgotten about. You sort it out, and the next day it's forgotten about. And if a gypsy man or a gypsy lady shakes your hand and makes a deal, they're honoured to do that deal, even if they undercut themselves. If they've shook on their hand and said they're going to sell you X, Y, and Z for whatever they've said, then they're honoured bound to do so. Like I mentioned with Jessie, in Starboard and Severn, her trailer was a meeting place. So some sites, when I was a little boy, they used to have a fire at night, and the old people would talk and young people, and they'd go on the fires, and usually the kids would to go away and like play, and the adults would talk business, and obviously been sorting out the day's take-ins. Some sites have community halls, some sites don't. The two in Cardiff, one's got Shiny Newton's got a huge community hall, but after 5 o'clock it's closed. So it's not really a community hall, because there should be access to open all night for the community to use, because it's a community hall. That's the idea of having a community hall. And even the pod on Rover Way, it's one shipping container, and it's filthy. Absolutely filthy, and council should be ashamed of themselves. It's council building, council building. But yeah, if people are meeting together these days, it's usually in people's trailers, usually in family trailers, usually at weddings, funerals, christenings, but also gypsy fairs like Appleby Horse Fair, Appleby Fair with the horses. People go and buy and sell horses. Horses are very important. Stone on the wall. So there are little pockets throughout the year that communities and groups get together. But I really wish that these community halls on site really were community halls, not just lip service. So I think it's an agenda by government, because we're just on the census in 2011. What does that say about the government? We've been in the country 500 years, and you've just made us on the census now. And funny enough, Roma isn't even on the census. So we talk about gypsy as the UK gypsies, and obviously Irish as Irish travellers. And without Roma brothers and sisters that came over recently, they're not even on the initial census. So it's good that we're on there, gypsies and travellers. But what about our Roma brothers and sisters? I think government has that issue. We've got our gypsies. We don't want any more, thank you. And there's that sort of energy. And obviously, if that's at government level, how's that filtered down to local authority? What's that say to the psyche here in Wales? So I think there needs to be much more work done at the policy level, and certainly directly from government, to make things better, not just give it lip service, really make a difference. In sports division in Cardiff Bay. I was at college doing my GCSEs and my A levels, and I was also working on initial weekends. When I was growing up, I always knew I was going to be short, and I wasn't very athletic like the other young men on the site. They're very strong, and I certainly know I couldn't lift those trees or do that labour that they do, because that just wasn't for me. And I had a passion for the arts. I eventually trained as a contemporary dancer, which you know. But no, obviously dance opened another world, and that was a whole other conversation. Yes, I worked in retail. I worked in administration. I used to do cashing up tills. I used to be really good at counting money. My dad was really proud of me. And then I went to college and then I carried on working in retail on this weekend, and then I was lucky enough to get a scholarship to train as a contemporary dancer in Laban in London, which is the top contemporary dance university in Europe, so it's the top with a scholarship. Moved to London. That was scary. I was from a site in Wales as a gypsy boy, going to London and doing ballet. That was like, what am I doing? I'm doing ballet now and contemporary and jazz. And then when I was left university and went back to site, obviously when it was summer, summer, I was back to being a mushy boy, a gypsy boy again, and then I'd go back from the site back to being a ballet dancer again. It was a really, really bizarre life, but really exciting, and I found a medium that spoke to me. I was very athletic, and I could pick up sequences, and I enjoyed dancing. I enjoyed moving around, and it helped. I had a really nice teacher when I did my A levels. obviously I had a wake up call when went to university. They were really strict, but of course they would be because you are going to the top universities. But I moved up when I was in like university. Moved up grades, and that showed my achievement. And from Larbin, I then worked as a self-employed contemporary dancer, which is a teacher, dancer, choreographer throughout England and Wales, predominantly London and Birmingham. I did find it hard to find work as a dancer in Wales, purely because there just isn't work here. They used to have Welsh independent dance and other little bits and bobs, but it really wasn't enough to live on, really. So as a contemporary dancer, you had to be prepared to travel, which is great. I've travelled all my life, so I'm used to uprooting and going to a new town. So that was nothing new to me. And then I remember doing a piece in Chapter Art Centre. I met a gentleman from Montreal, and then I went to Montreal. So all of a sudden, now I'm going from UK to overseas by myself, and I thought, what's going on? You know, I'm a gypsy boy from Cardiff, and I'm doing this. But it was wonderful, and the best thing with the arts is, I mean, anything's possible, you know, and working with talented dancers, choreographers, and just learning from people. I've dressed up as a teddy bear, and I've done costume work, and that was a whole nother experience. I'm now as a teddy bear dancing around for children's TV, and then from there I also worked as I did more training. I went to the Martha Graham School in New York and enhanced my skills. Supported by the Arts Council of Wales, and then I came back and started doing choreography. So yeah, it's always changing, and then obviously I got linked with BVS&W, and then we started in the Gypsy festivals and in England and in Wales. Well, I started the festival in England with Jake Bowers and Patricia Knight, but there was no funding for the work here in Wales, and I thought, well, that's kind of sad because I know the kids on site have like nothing. So we came back to Wales, and I started working with yourself, Mickey, and then we put on a short project, and that short project in 2009 has grown year upon year. It's now all over Wales. It's in north, south, east, west, all over the place. And it really is a community development project. It's worked directly on site with children and young people, doing arts-based activities from dance, circus, animation, photography, all sorts. It's all about upskilling the children and young people. It's a bonus they get to work with talented artists. It's actually upskilling, get the kids' language, self-esteem, getting those fine motor skills working. And obviously then we also do the policy development with the academic symposium. So we do a lot from the grassroots level right to government. So, and I think I come from a gypsy community, and it works. I guess I must be doing what I was meant to do because it wouldn't work out, and it just works out. I meet generous people like yourself and Michael Flynn who help and support, and the projects grow year upon year, and it's just taking the project to the site, and actually the project works by itself, you know, and people want to have a go, you know. So it's wonderful, and also a very privileged position to be in, and I thank God every day. So I'm really excited. And we have this month, obviously last month, in June, we had Gypsy Roma Traveller History Month. We had the Gala Day at St David's Hall, which is the Gypsy Festival. We had the National Symposium at City Hall, which is for the policy development. And we also had the exhibition by Romany artist Daniel Baker called Shine in Newport. And he's great. He's a Romany artist, top of his game, internationally recognised, working with us here in Wales. That's fantastic for myself and for the charity and for the actual community. And we've also got an exhibition launched on Saturday, the 13th. Is that right? Yeah, the 13th of June in Cardiff Stories, and that's the Heritage Project, looking at this oral history, looking at the memories of gypsies and travellers here in Cardiff, and creating a travelling gallery, and that'll be toured around Wales. So quite a lot of interesting projects directly on site with a direct link, because I'm from site, but also at the government, and we've also got partners in Wales, England, and of course beyond. We also work with international partners, so we're internationally recognised by academics, activists, community members, politicians throughout. So I mean, it's if you want gypsies and travellers, you come see us, and it works. Yeah, I was lucky enough. I did a mentoring and shadowing programme with the Welsh Government called Step Up Cymru. It was a 6 months project. It pairs up people from BME communities with local assembly members and councillors. It's a mentoring shadowing programme, so you learn how policy is made, how to influence policy, and how policy is implemented. So for me, it was perfect because obviously I came from the dance theatre background, and policy policy development was actually quite a new area, but it was really exciting to actually be on that programme. I was paired up with Helen Mary Jones, Plaid Cymru, but I had a wonderful experience. I found out about policies, how they're made, how they're implemented, but most important, how to influence policy, and to take that back to the Gypsy and Traveller community, because actually we all need to be active members in that process to make things better for us here in Wales and of course beyond. Yeah, I think Leeds in England did a really good campaign as part of the Gypsy Traveller History Month. They had a poster design and competition, and they had the best in England. They had reporters, they had doctors, they had professors from Gypsy Traveller community, nurses, and that was a really nice positive image. You had a nurse in front of a trailer. You wouldn't think she was a gypsy, but she was a gypsy. But I think getting those sort of images to sites so young people know, actually, if they want to be a doctor or a nurse or even a lawyer, they can be. And there are successful gypsies and travellers out there, and making sure that information goes back. We have recently worked with Welsh Government on a new teacher resource pack. Sadly, that hasn't been launched yet. Hopefully, it will be launched soon. They have some difficulties with the Welsh language. They want to, which you wouldn't think so, in Wales, they want to have it translated to Welsh. But I think it's important that Gypsies and Traveller culture is taught on the national curriculum. We've been here for 500 years, and that's important that it's actually reflected throughout society, and it's not sort of shoved away in like a desk somewhere. It's out there, it's visible, it's seen, it's breathing, it's got some life to it. So hopefully next year I'm looking forward to seeing their new resource pack and also publicising that on our charity website to make sure all schools are aware if they want to know about Gypsies and Traveller culture. Yeah. I remember Queen Street, walking on Queen Street as a little boy, thinking this is a really long road. It's huge. Maybe I had little legs, I don't know, maybe. But sites in England are better than Wales. There's a shift now, that's changed. In Wales they've got the Travelling to Better Future policy, but like I said, so far it's just proven to be lip service. There's no the big difference is this new policy says that the government will give local authority 100% funding for the upkeep of sites, and also if anyone needs any new sites. There's that chicken and egg thing. The council won't bite because the council are afraid if they do put a Gypsy Traveller site on their patch, they're afraid they won't get re-elected again. So there is that sort of debate, and that's the raw reality. But there needs to be something in place where it's actually, just like the Caravan Sites Act, that there is a duty posed on local authority, and actually that there is some monitoring of this, so to make sure that there is enough adequate accommodation. Because we look at the Pat Niner report back in 2006, the Welsh Government report. Basically, the report says we don't have enough adequate sites for gypsies and travellers, and sites we do have aren't actually fit for purpose. I mean, if you look at Rover Way, for goodness sake, it's got, I think the latest report by the council said there's pollution in the air, the land, the water, by the actual site, they're putting people's health at risk. I mean, it's next to the steelwork, initial tip, they've got power cables, potholes. I mean, there's rats around that site. I mean, and children live on that site, and that's a council-run site. If that happened in a settled community, there'd be uproar. So I think council should be ashamed, because it's appalling. We're 2013, and this is the condition in about third world countries. You won't have to go that far, like a Gypsies and Travellers. But for some unknown reason, because Gypsies and Travellers poorly educated and unable to challenge the social system, things slip between the net, and people are happy to be like that. They're happy to let it slip and don't rock the boat. Well, I'm sorry, the whole guard needs to change, and we need a new positive approach forward, because people do want to be more active, people do want to be more present in this community. We'll just give them a chance, and they should have the basic human rights that anyone else has, and so far they don't. Yeah, often not. Gypsies will go into home when they're much older, purely because of healthcare is easier to access the services you need. And these sites are cold in the initial winter. I mean, some sites haven't even got lights on them. It's actually appalling. We don't have enough sites here in Wales. It's overcrowding, and when young people grow up, I think the last site was made about 20 years ago in Wales. I mean, they're making housing associations. They pop up everywhere, but Gypsy and Travel sites just don't. There is, people do feel proud that they're on a Gypsy Traveller site, because it's the community, it's their language, it's their culture, it's their way of being. It's with the nature, it's with the horses, the animals. It's in the actual blood. and people would rather be on a Gypsy Traveller site than be in a house, but unfortunately there just isn't enough adequate accommodation. That's the actual reality, and the sites we have aren't fit for purpose. I mean, you've got the Shire Newton site, which is the show site, the sort of the sort of flagship site here in Wales, but the rest of the sites aren't like that. I mean, I've been on some sites. I mean, it's appalling. One site was actually built over like a manhole, and actually I think one year the actual ground actually fell in on itself, and it's the Shepherd's Hill site in Pontypool, and that's called historically, for no particular reason, Lower Race Gypsy and Traveller site, and everyone lives on Upper Race. So if you're a young person applying for a job on Lower Race caravan site, you won't get an interview. The children and young people, when they know they get a certain age, they've got to use the local travel education service as an address to at least be seen to get a job interview. Because obviously these days, farming and agriculture work's dying out, and so is hawking, knocking the initial doors. Though my brother works at Clairvoyant in town, people come knock his door, so it's slightly different. It's a topic people don't talk about, but there are gay people. I've known two lesbians to live together on site. Actually, my aunt's a lesbian. Her name's Helen James. She was very beautiful when she was a young woman. Absolutely stunning. Obviously, life changes, things happen. She's quite a very big, strong lady now. But she takes on the man role within her relationship. And her partner takes on the female role, but they're both two females living together. But for her, she could fight as good as a man, so they didn't have a problem with her at all, really. But it shouldn't be that way. I mean, you should be able to be, straight, gay, bisexual, transgender, whatever you want to be. There are some interesting projects happening in Ireland, fair enough, with the gay and lesbian gypsies and transgender. So there are things happening out there, and even in Esher Roma, there are. And people say that there aren't any gay gypsies. Well, of course there is. I mean, there's gays in all walks of life, yeah. Well, we both work. I've worked with all those museums. I've linked up with Glenn Jordan in the Butetown Heritage Arts Centre on the Bay, and I think he's a wonderful man. Really, loads of energy, pearls of wisdom. We're currently working with Cardiff Stories and also St Fagans on the Oral History project. So it's documenting the characters in Cardiff on the Roverway and Shire Newton site, and it's been a better community development project than I actually anticipated. We've got loads of wonderful stories from across sector, from across generations, from male and female, from 18 to 81. And there's all sorts there. There's rag and bone men, there's fortune tellers, there's horse dealers, there's people that's been in the war, been in the mines. There's a pearl of knowledge and wisdom there. And it's actually launched this week. And there's also an online mini website called Tales from the Trailer at romaniarts.co.uk that if people want to find out about the local gypsies and travellers here in Cardiff, they can do. So it's oral history. Audio, visual, so you'll hear the person's story and see old photographs. I think the oldest photograph we've got so far we've managed to capture to date is from the 1920s, so up until present day, and there's even photographs of the Gypsy Traveller sites, so it'll be quite interesting for people from the settled community to come along and to see what a site actually looks like, because they have ideas, but do they really know the Gypsies and Travellers? So you pretty much have to. They are really good, and they give support. They help because obviously they're used to having exhibitions, all year round. So they do give guidance and support, and actually they do want to link with Gypsies and Travellers. They do want Gypsies and Travellers to access their service. Obviously, Gypsies and Travellers predominantly might not accidentally walk into a museum. They probably wouldn't, go there intentionally. But we are seeing a change now, and I think it's nice that St Fagans gave us this opportunity to have an area of their gallery to show Gypsies and Travellers culture. We don't want to give them an exhibition that's going to be shoved in a warehouse. We want it to be present, seen, living and breathing, and also for Gypsies and Travellers and people from the settled community to enjoy. But the exhibition's actually shocked me. There's been a lot of... I've been on the site and we've had people's trailers running around finding photographs. We've had this little scanner, it's a little dot, and I go there to... Obviously we into the elderly community, then the actually young people, and then they come with these huge photographs, and I can't scan that, and I've gone running around the trailers at night, getting all the photographs out, and it's been quite nice. There's been some photographs even their family hasn't even seen, so it's actually gonna shock a lot of people. But wonderful pearls. Every story had something positive to say and something to contribute to society, so it's going to be quite an eye opener.